Okay, so our third topic is the coach's role in motivating a player to play more often and to take part in competitions. So, like I said earlier, in my club, I have mostly players who play once a week. Some of them play in the league, the local league. Some of them play the odd tournament. I run regular tournaments up to like 9 times a year, roughly, with different age groups, like under 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 18, whatever. But most of my players are either playing once a week, or they might, like I say, a few of them play in the league, not many, and some of them play occasionally in tournaments. Now, I'm forever trying to encourage them to play in the league, to play in these tournaments, especially the ones I organize, because they're on their doorstep in the same town. And they've got the option of doing morning or afternoon or all day. They don't have to do all day. They can choose. So I'm quite flexible, and like I say, they've got all the different age groups. Now, just want people's opinion on whether you feel you should just leave players to their own devices and let them come to you if they want to, or should you be trying to encourage them to play more? Because obviously we all want our players to improve, and they've got to compete regularly to be able to take their game to the next level. So I will ask Andy first this time.
A hard one. I think on this one, I think it is important for the coach to try and pick out the players that they think would improve at tournaments. But you've also got to have the parents backing as well. For me, being up north, it was really hard when I was a junior. All tournaments were down south. Luckily for me, my mum and dad were able to fund it. I think in my last year as a junior, I played in all junior tournaments and senior tournaments. And in 1 year, they spent 25 grand taking us around tournaments. So wow. I think players have got to have the parents that are willing, especially if they're from the northeast, willing to be able to back them, willing to be able to say, right, okay, you want to do this, I'm willing to put some money into you. But I do think coaches can guide the players, but not make them.
No.
Some players don't. I know a few players who locally, I think Eli knows a couple of them that I might be talking about. Locally, they're good, they're improving, but these players go to national tournaments and they don't play well under pressure. And I don't know, that's a really difficult one for does the coach say or do the parents say?
The only thing I can see about selecting players to choose which ones to go to tournaments and so on is you never quite know. Somebody that might not be showing a lot of promise might go to a shine, and you never know. Might give them, even if they don't do well, even if they do rubbish, they might actually think, I want to get good. I want to try and save and beat some of these people.
Yeah.
So you just don't know. Other people might go to a tournament, hate it, and never play again. But I think they need some kind of exposure when they get to the level. I suppose you got to know when to put them in and what level. You don't want to be putting beginners into a 4-star, I guess.
Yeah, that's what I mean about the players up north. There's a couple who thrive. They love it, playing around the area, but then they go to big events and they don't perform. Whereas, like you say, Rory, you could get someone who just likes to turn up, likes to participate, not really the best one in your club, but put him in a tournament, and he might come back and think, actually, hang on, I'm going to now stop.
I have had players, and Will probably know who I'm talking about, even though I won't say the name. I've had players who, they turn up to the training sessions, and all they want to do is just have a bit of a joke and a laugh with their friends. They don't take part properly, or they do it, just go through the motions in the session. You put them in a tournament or a league match, and the concentration that comes on their face, and you can see, and they want to win, and they do win. And I've had these couple of people talk about, they've actually gone on and won hundreds, maybe not hundreds, but loads and loads of tournaments. But in a training session, you would never think they were even a player, a proper player. But going back to what you said, Andy, about traveling around, it kind of makes me think my players have it too easy because they've got tournaments right on their doorstep in their own town and they're not going to them. Maybe it's too easy. Maybe the fact that you had to get yourself out there and travel kind of made you value the tournaments more.
Possibly, that's possible. I mean, even now as a vet, Rory, I'm travelling 3 hours to get to a tournament, a competition. Derby is my closest.
And I know from my own personal experience, I travel all around the country playing tournaments, and I think you've kind of got to have that mentality of the kind of a willingness to travel, even if you have tournaments on your doorstep. I still think you should branch out and play elsewhere, because I mean, okay, I run quite a lot of I get referees in to run my own tournaments, and I can play quite a few tournaments on my doorstep as well. But I still think you need to go outside your own area. You play different people, and it shows more motivation. And I think all the good players do that. I don't know of any top players that didn't do that.
Up north, Rory, we call them postcode players. Right. They play well in the area, but then outside the area, nah.
Yeah. Okay, I'll pass the question on to Ellie.
So you maneuvered a little bit with your answers. So again, it's an individual thing. Every player is different, and you again have to find out in which direction they want to go in by simple questions. And this is really important, by the way. What you don't know, you don't know. And if you are not exposing these players, they will never know. So it is important for you as the coach to try and guide them as to which direction you believe they can go in. And then it's down to them as whether they take the bait or not. But if you don't expose them, the answer will always be no.
It's a difficult one because, I mean, how much do you kind of push them? Do you ask them once? Do you ask them twice, 3 times? Do you give them a month in between asking them? Every competition, so like, for example, for me, when I run a tournament on my own, and I'm refereeing my own tournament locally to where the players are, I will always try and get an answer out of them as to whether they're going to play or not. I won't say they have to play or anything like that, but I will at least ask them to give me an answer, yes or no. Are you going to play? Even then, they don't always reply, which that bothers me a little bit. I mean, I think.
Well, again, this is that kind of gives you the answer when they don't answer you, and again, it depends on that individual, and you have to work out with the individual. Are they saying no because it's them, or is it because of their parents? Or you got to try and dig a little bit.
I don't always get the information or the answers, and even when I've tried to dig, people get quite cagey. They don't want to tell you the reason. I know some people have different reasons, like say they might have church, or they might have another sport or another activity, or they have a family day, or some kind of family event, whatever. And I have got plenty of people have told me what the reasons are. And sometimes for people, it's always the same reason. Sometimes they have different reasons. Other times, fair enough, they just don't want to do it, But that's fine. But sometimes, I mean, quite a few times they won't kind of give me a good reason. I'm like, okay. So,
well, I mean, again, it comes down to you at the beginning when you start with a player, or towards a certain period of time that you're with a player. You need to they should be having their goals and their targets written down. And if a player says to you, hey, I want to be England #1, but he doesn't turn up for any tournaments, then you can say, well, why have you written this down here? You can work with what you have. If you haven't got anything, then you can't work. So the way you dig is important. It's not just digging. You've got to dig in directions that will give you the answers that you're looking for.
So in the lockdown period, I've been doing Zoom coaching sessions with my kind of 13 and 14-year-old players. I've got about 9 or 10 of them. And so we started off doing like warm-up, shadow play, bat and ball skills, target practice.
You don't do warm-up, sorry.
Well, you haven't got actual table tennis tables, so you've got to do something, haven't you? So
Yes.
I have been doing warm-ups, mostly shadow play, but also just physical drills because there's limited of what you can do on Zoom. So, you know, on the table tennis club, you've got the table. Anyway, and these are only 40-minute Zoom sessions. But more recently, towards the last couple of weeks, I did get the players to all write down a short-term goal, which is kind of something specific, you know, the SMART goals, specific, measured, achievable, realistic, and timed. So I gave them a time limit of 2 months after lockdown, after they start playing again, what they'd like to achieve, and not like, oh, I want to beat somebody. No, I want to be able to do 5 backhand topspins against the push in a row, for example, or something specific that they can measure. And I also got them to think about a 5-year goal. Or no, it wasn't. It was a 1-year goal. It was more of a 1-year goal, where you want to be in 1 year's time as a player. Maybe it could be a ranking. It could be wins in National Cadet League. So that is definitely a step in the right direction, I think. And then once they've got a goal, they can work towards that. Okay, Gav?
Yeah, I think to answer the question, I think the coach has a massive role. I think it's critical that a coach has a massive input into influencing the players to go to tournaments. I think in the early stages, a player and the parents, they don't know any better. They don't know why they should go to a tournament, what's good, how many, which tournament, where. So it's part of the coach's role or part of the coach's job description, in my opinion. Whether you're a volunteer or not, it's still part of your job description that you have to be the one that's guiding them to do the right things and go to the right things that are not only going to make them better table tennis players, but it's going to be a positive experience for any kid to play in a tournament, be amongst his peers, win, lose, learn life lessons, you know. So I think the coach's role is huge, and I think we do live in an era now where it's really parents dominated, you know, and there's not so many volunteers around anymore. Coaches are not so willing to give up their time and bring these kids to tournaments, so like maybe the older days when they would have. So there's a lot of difficulties surrounding that. And like you said, you know, kids saying no and not giving you valid reasons. I think that's also part of the coach's role to not drag a reason out of them. Obviously, in a respectful way, you have to hold your kids to account. You know, don't give them the opportunity to just say no. There has to be some reason offered, and like you said, if it's something like church or whatever they may do on that day, then that's okay. Or we can try and work around. We can try and find a workaround and work together as a team between you and the parents and the kid to find a workaround, because this is going to be a positive experience for their kid. You know.
Another issue can be when you're coaching players who are kind of beginner, intermediate, improver standards, that there isn't really appropriate levels of competition for them to enter. Like the local league is too hard, even the bottom division, your 1 stars, 2 stars, they turn up even at that level, they're losing them all, like game 2, game 1 or something like that. I mean, locally within Sussex, we used to have this thing called a Sussex circuit, which was aimed at the kind of beginnery, improvery, intermediate standard players. That's gone by the wayside. I used to run it. I started running it after other organisers stopped running it, and kind of the entry levels got lower and lower, and it kind of fizzled out. It's something I may start back up again, but
I think that's you're spot on. And to be honest, I don't think anyone on this call knows better than an Irish player, because we're 20 levels behind where it is in England. There's so little opportunities for players to play amongst their own standards. You know, you're either good or you're bad. You know, there's such a massive gulf, and there's nowhere for players to go, and that's a huge cultural problem and events problem that we have. And I know there's problems in England too. So I would absolutely echo your thoughts there. It's that's a whole nother show. You know, we could talk for that for 2 hours about how to make that better.
There is a primary schools league locally as well, and there are certain opportunities, but when you get over the kind of primary school age, it's a difficult one. Will, your thoughts on this, having been through the system? You've been through the circuit system, the 2 stars, the 1 stars, JBL, local league. What are your opinions on it?
Yeah, I think the coach needs to be encouraging and present the opportunities, but I don't think pushing players towards it necessarily works. I think the more you push someone, the more they naturally not want to do it. I don't think people like to be told what to do particularly. I think by telling a player they're really good and you'd recommend going playing a tournament's a better idea than constantly being like, yeah, you should play this. I think by telling them they've got the ability to play, I think that's a lot better. And regarding the tournaments, I think team stuff generally works a bit better. I know starting off younger, turning up to a singles tournament and you don't know anyone, everyone looks better than you, you don't know who to knock up with. It's quite intimidating, but I played NCL in Sussex, so loads of players I knew there, local club players, and it was quite fun, it was quite relaxed. I think straight away going into singles can be quite intimidating. You don't know people are shouting random stuff around the hall, you don't really know what's going on. Whereas when you kind of keep it with your friends in teams, like players from Sussex played JBL this year who haven't really been playing properly. I think it's because the team atmosphere seems a lot better, and maybe that's why it holds better in other sports like football. I don't think we have enough team stuff in table tennis going on.
So yeah, like NCL seems to be a lot more popular. So basically all of my players play in NCL, and they've all pretty much enjoyed it and keep playing. And for people who don't know, it's National Cadet League. You get 9 or 10 matches a day in a team situation. So you play like 5 teams in a day or 3 teams, depending on the format. And it's a team event. So I think that is quite an attractive thing. So maybe something to think about for me would be to run some team tournaments, like team 1-stars, team 2-star tournaments.
Yeah,
that's a better idea. It's a good idea from Will, because as a young, like Will says, as a young one, it's very intimidating.
Yeah.
But if you've got a couple of mates behind you, it's enjoyable.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
and also club games against each other. We used to do that a lot because you'd want to train together and beat this other club. So it was more like team morale in sessions, and that kind of goes back to the original point. Get people to train harder, same motivation to go beat this other club.
So Will was basically joined very shortly after I'd set up, or even as I set up the club in 2011. And at that stage, I ran loads of friendly matches against basically all the clubs in the area in Sussex. We went there and they'd come back to us. I haven't done that so much in recent years, I think, because I've been busy with refereeing a lot more 2-stars and 1-stars and senior tournaments. But that is something that was always quite popular as a team event. Again, I usually had like 2 or 3 teams from each club playing the equivalent teams from the other club. We tried to balance the standard, which we normally managed. I think we won nearly all the matches actually at that stage. But
if you're lucky and you've got that many players, then yeah, it's good. But like Gav's already mentioned, being in Ireland, he's struggled. Being in the northeast, we've struggled. We're lucky to get a 2-man or a 3-man team for cadets, juniors.
Yeah. Well, these were just one-off matches. It wasn't like a big thing. It was just we'd go there once and they'd come back to us, and we did that like a couple times a year. We'd play the same team a couple times a year, and we did it with like 5 different clubs. But yeah, that's another thing that would be something for coaches to think about, arranging friendly matches against other clubs. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, Andy, before we change.
Can I ask one quick question? So I know there's 3 full-time coaches on here. So just a quick question for you.
Yeah.
We've talked about coaching tonight. So if you've got your group, you coach them 2-3 times a week, you then put that group into a tournament. Do you then also travel with them? Do you go to that tournament with them? Do you sacrifice your home life?
I will answer this one first because it's probably a different answer from the other 2. I am a prolific player. I play basically every weekend, usually both Saturday and Sunday, or if I'm not playing, I'm either refereeing or coaching or whatever. So I basically have no weekends free, and that's when the tournaments are. And when I'm a referee, I'm not technically supposed to be coaching. Obviously, you can have a word with the player after the match is finished. If you get a chance to watch, that is, obviously, you're being a referee, you can barely have many opportunities to watch because it's a very, 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 very busy job. There are down times where groups are on and stuff, but the other kind of considerations is the financial, because if your players were going away even to something like JBL, so if I was to go to JBL, I used to have teams, I don't at the moment. One of the considerations is, okay, like I said, I might miss a tournament of my own, but I'm not too worried about that. But you've got to then pay for your travel and accommodation to get there. Nobody's going to pay that for you. And then okay, I've tried to get lifts from people, and sometimes it's worked out, sometimes it hasn't. I've done it once where I got the parents to contribute to my accommodation. Oh, my screen seemed to freeze there for a minute. So they've kind of chipped in for my accommodation, which was very basic. It was like £30 a night travel lodge or something. So, and I would only probably 2 nights, because if we were going up together, it would be going up the Friday night. But even if it was me going up on my own on the Saturday morning, and I got quite a bit of reluctance from parents to even chip in £10 each for my accommodation, and from one of them to give me a lift. I mean, one thing I found was that a lot of the parents wanted to leave at midday or something silly on the Friday, when I was coaching till 7 on the Friday evening, so I couldn't really leave until after 7. But a lot of parents seem to want to get there really early. Anyway, that's JBL. What I did do this year, I made the commitment, was I did attend all 4 NCLs as a coach, because I have stopped refereeing. I used to be the referee of NCL, so I was always there, but I was always refereeing. So this year I made that commitment to take those 4 days and attend all 4 NCLs, because I had 9 players playing each time. So, and I thought that was a useful use of my time, basically, to see the players in action.
Obviously, coaches expect players to make a sacrifice. So I don't know if that's just me, but would players then expect the coach to also make a sacrifice? I don't know.
Yeah. Some coaches get paid as part of their job to go to, like Greenhouse, for example, to go to tournaments at weekends, Grantham, that kind of thing. Club coaches like me don't, I guess, unless they're getting individually players to contribute, which, okay, I think it does happen in some cases, but I don't think it's that common. I mean, so Will has experienced a situation of where I've gone there as the coach of the JBL team, and then the following year it didn't work out. I don't think people were that bothered, and I didn't feel that I needed that I was being appreciated enough to make it worthwhile giving up the time. But I mean, Will, do you want to give your side of that thing on the whole topic as well? Well, everything on the whole topic as well.
I mean, I think in that situation, because obviously, as you said, a lot of the tournaments we were playing in, you were umpiring, what do you call it, running the tournament.
Refereeing.
So although you had been like coaching us in practice, maybe we didn't have quite the team chemistry at tournaments. So JBL, obviously quite high pressure, like big points and stuff. I think maybe that could have worked better if we had almost practiced it at like 2 stars together, if that makes sense.
Well, you had okay, I was there as the referee, I suppose. So
that's what I mean. I think most of the tournaments we'd all played, you weren't there. You were running the tournament, so we didn't quite. You've been coaching us in sessions. It's quite different coaching signing a session to a tournament, as you say. Like people train completely different to how they play in tournaments. So maybe it wasn't quite there. Yeah.
I guess it can be quite frustrating at the. As a corner coach. I mean, it's never been something I've been that passionate about, coaching people at the side of the table. I'm more of a session coach. I don't know. I think I get a bit frustrated at myself, which you shouldn't. You should, you see them in the training hall and they're doing something, and then you go to a match and they're not doing their top spin. They're just pushing or blocking or going back lobbing. And as a coach, you're like, pulling your hair out, like what? And it's difficult, and you seem to be always, at least I do, you seem to be always saying the same things to the players, and they don't like it, you don't like it. I mean, I guess it's a personality thing as well. Some people are always very positive and bubbly, and they'll just point out the positives. Yeah, it's not my.
When you see Eli coaching at the side, he looks exactly the same as he does tonight. He never changes. He just sits there like that.
Yeah,
it's natural.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one. I think some coaches are good at it, and some are less good at it. I'm always like trying to tell them the technique and what they should be doing, and tactics about what they should be doing with the other person. Sometimes they don't want to hear that. They just need to be kind of hear positive comments about, you know, what they're doing right. And, you know, okay, Ali, your turn.
It's a very good question. And I'm going to try and cover everything that Rory, have been speaking about for the last 30 minutes. And, okay, so if you're a club coach and you're very passionate about the players, me personally, it all depends on the person. I do believe you should give a little bit more, because you've got to remember, at the end of the day, they are helping you. They are, they're coming to your training sessions. They are, effectively, they make your club, and you've got to show them a little bit of, hey, you know, I appreciate what you guys do. I'm going to give up a bit of my time here and there. Obviously, not too much, but a little bit goes a long way. Now, obviously, it also depends on your situation. Some of us are self-employed. Some of us are employed. And what I've always tried to do is negotiate with the clubs or the academies or wherever I'm working, or the club or the associations, that my wages are maybe a bit more for my work, and I'll sacrifice a weekend or weekdays, evenings, to take the players out of my own time, and that kind of covers it, if you see what I mean. So yeah. I do think it's important for a coach to be there, not just in the training hall. And Will clearly said that, you know, the balance wasn't good when you went to JBL. It didn't feel really work so well, because it's important to have a connection with your players, not just in the training hall, but in the tournament hall as well. So for me personally, I've always, in fact, when I used to work at Harefield, I was paid for 4 days, and every tournament that I went to, I did that voluntarily, and I sacrificed maybe 2, sometimes 3 weekends a month out of my own time. And I just did it because I felt, well, I'm giving them everything in the hall. I've got to give them more. It's not enough just training them in the hall and then they just off you go on your bike, and you know, if you fall over, it's your fault.
Were you covered? Were you covered with your expenses at least?
Well, the only thing they did pay is my travel. Yeah, they paid my travel.
Me, if I were to go anywhere, it would have to come out of my own pocket. Any travel, accommodation, food, that, you know.
Yeah, so that's where you've got to try and see as to what you can do for yourself. So like I said, I would bump up maybe a little bit my coaching sessions, so that kind of covers me from my expenses or whatever. But it was very important for me to give back. Now, Andy, going back to your sacrifice, the players are sacrificing and you think the coaches should sacrifice. I'm not so much in agreement with that, because players should sacrifice because they're doing it for them. The coach, it's more of a job. He doesn't have to sacrifice. Maybe he could, or maybe he should, but he doesn't have to. The player has to sacrifice because they're investing in themselves. As a coach, you're giving them a service. You don't necessarily have to sacrifice. It's a choice. And like I said, I'm one of those that chooses to sacrifice and take them out sometimes and go to tournaments with them. But, you know, if I could get paid, I would definitely be more up for that. Especially now that I'm like a private contractor kind of. If someone wants me to go to a tournament, I'll only do it if they pay me, because it's my time and it's different. I don't work with them every day in a club, so I don't feel like I owe them to go to a tournament with them.
One further comment about, say, JBL and those kind of competitions is that the last time when I entered the team, which involved Will, basically all the kids' parents went along. There were like 4 or 5 parents there, 3 kids, and they all had at least one parent along. Now, for me, I mean, it's great that they're showing support, but my ideal situation would have been me going there with the players, like me driving them up, driving back, and just kind of having parents out of the situation. I never actually wanted the parents there because I felt it was a bit inhibiting my coaching, because I felt I kind of need to be in charge of the kind of corner coaching and had the discipline and whatever of the players. But when there's parents there, I always felt it's a bit of a compromise. You're compromising, but you can't just say to parents you can't come. You know, you can't. You know, I never actually told them not to come, or even that I didn't want them to come.
Yeah, but I think you can make it very clear when the parents are there. These are your seats. You sit there, you watch, and that is your job, and you support. You know, that's the way I do it. And if parents don't like it, then I can tell them, well, I can walk away, and I don't need to be here. So, you know, you just set the tone and keep it. It's simple, really.
Eli, do you think that
previously, a number of years ago, back when I was Horsham as opposed to Horsham Spinners coach, I had teams in JBL and I drove them there, and I was, you know, there was no parents there. I drove them back, and I felt there was more team building. We drove in the same car. Yeah. It was more of a team experience. We went to the same restaurant in the evening. We were in the same hotel. Whereas when there's, you know, 3 different sets of parents and families, we tend to go stay in different accommodations, go to a different meal, go in different cars. It didn't feel like a team event so much. That was my view on it. That was another reason why I kind of opted out of.
But like I said, again, you set the tone.
Right, you know when you said that you chose to go with your players. Your players gave you that time during the week, and you chose to go with them on a weekend to a tournament. Yes. Do you think that because you did that your players then showed you that bit more respect? And then come the following week at the training session, they then worked harder for you, and you did it again. They then wanted to do that more for you, and when you were in their corner, they believed in you. They believed in what you were telling them. You told them during the week. You're there at the weekend. They believe in what you're saying. Did that?
I think there is an element of that, and don't get me wrong, I have done it in the past. I'm just saying more recently I've been a bit busier with various things, but I used to go.
I totally understand that, Rory, but I'm looking at it from a player, like Will's mentioned when he played in Junior British League. Yeah. He didn't feel that it was there. I'm just thinking of if I ever do get a team like that, and I know Eli's done it and he's been there, he's travelled the world with his teams. Do his teams show him more respect because he chooses to go with them? He chooses to miss out a weekend from his wife and kids, which I'm sure he would love, to go with them and to help his players.
This is it. I think that's it. I think you're spot on there, Andy. Is that when you're both going towards a goal together, then it's much stronger. But if one is here and one is there, there's a bit of a gulf difference there, and it doesn't allow everyone to push together forward. I mean, you'll still get results, but I think you're spot on. You have to sacrifice a little bit, and you have to show them that, hey, you know, I really care, and you do care, because you wouldn't give up your weekend if you didn't care. And
Gavin
they
probably
feel it,
felt that
you feel it.
Being like a national player with his national coach believing in him, it's going to push him to do more and think, right, I want to prove to you that because you believe in me, I want to prove to you that I can actually do it. I don't know whether that's a bit of a way that players might think.
No, you're dead right. There's no doubt about it. If you feel like your coach has trust in you and he believes in you and he's willing to do the same amount that you're willing to do for him, if he'll do it for you, if he'll give it back to you, there's no doubt that pushes you on and spurs you on and gives you more. And like, to answer the question very briefly, ideally, yes, you do travel to the events. Ideally, you travel to them all if you can. But again, it's already been mentioned 10 times, but it's circumstantial, you know. Yeah. For me and Ellie, we're private coaches. Okay, I have my national team para, but the other half of my job is private coaching, and Ellie's a private contractor as well. So we can't do that right now, you know. What if I had a club and it was different? Maybe I would build it into the membership fees that there's some coach expenses, or maybe I build it into the tournament fees to cover expenses to make sure I can do those things. You know,
so that might be an idea for Rory to push it that way, for him to be able to go with his club team to then give them, like Will, that push to be able to move on to the next level.
There's no doubt it's best for the players. Like if you can find a way to do it, it's best for the players.
But there is one advantage of not having a coach. You become a bit more independent. If you've always got a coach in the corner all of the time, that would probably be wrong as well, because then you don't think for yourself. I think you need a balance. I think you need sometimes when you're actually coaching yourself and figuring it out for yourself. I mean, I've never really had a coach at my corner. I mean, even in British League, the amount of advice you get isn't huge. I've normally played with younger people, and obviously they don't necessarily coach you back. But I think you kind of learn a bit from, you know, working it out for yourself. I think it is good to have a bit of both, in my view.
You're 100% right. Of course, you have to work it out for yourself. But there's a lot to be said for even just the coach being there to see what happens, you know, and being able to help the player to understand his own thought process and discuss afterwards. Doesn't that necessarily, even if you're not in the corner, you're there to offer your help and to allow them to build their own thoughts.
Me now as a vet, when I go to tournaments, Rory, you've seen, I've got my girlfriend there. She did play in the past, but she's more of a mental coach, and because she's there in the background and she believes in my ability, that then spurs me on to believe that actually, hang on a minute, I can do this. And that's why I've asked the question tonight, because I just think that a lot.
The last topic is how to keep players in the game beyond the age of 15 and 16, and you could extend that to 18 as well. From my point of view, I've, especially recently, I've lost a lot of players age 15, 16, and some of them were quite good. I mean, I've had teams that won under 11's national school championship. Then roughly the same players won it at under 13 and under 16 level as well, which was last year, not this season, the one before. And I've had about 10 kids of that kind of age, 15 to 16, quit before year 11 or during year 11, but beyond when they go to college. I mean, I think if you keep them to 18, then it's another kind of time when they could quit. I mean, some of them keep playing at university, but what can we do to kind of keep players in the game beyond that kind of age? And I'll start with Will this time, as he hasn't had a question first yet.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's lots of reasons. So obviously year 11, like 15, 16, you've got your GCSEs. So I think lots of people just stop playing sport completely to completely focus on...
Can I stop you there for a second?
Go for it.
I've had that excuse a lot of times, and I think if you're keen on a sport, playing 2 hours, even 4 hours a week is perfectly doable and manageable if you manage your time. And actually, I think it can help take your mind off your study and relax a little bit. So I'm not sure I accept that as an excuse. I accept it as an excuse for not doing 10, 20 hours a week, but to completely stop, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not convinced with that one. Anyway, carry on what you were saying.
What was I saying? Yeah, GCSE. Right, where was I?
You killed him, Rory.
Reasons why 15 or 6-year-olds.
All right. So one thing which I don't think a lot of people talk about is the ranking system, because I think a lot of people I know have dropped out around 15, 16, started really high ranked at like 12, 13, where it's quite easy to climb the rankings. And they kind of got through, and they probably played about the same, and really keen players will start playing a lot more, and they'll gradually slip down. And I think by the time they get to that, school gets a bit busy. They probably don't like being like 30 places lower than they were. I think some of them just quit because they don't like these players beating them, which they used to beat quite comfortably.
So they got to a fairly good level early on, but to keep that level, you need to train more than you were previously, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I quite comfortably got to nationals when I was under 13s, but I probably play about the same now, and I was nowhere close for under 18s. But I wasn't too bothered about going down a bit, but I know some people like top 20 and then they go 40, 50, and it's.
You were playing more then. You were attending 2 or 3 sessions a week, and you had league matches, and you had tournament. You played a lot more tournaments when you were younger than you do. I mean, I think you played none this season. Tournaments, did you?
I played JBL and county, and I think two 2-stars.
1 to maybe 1 2-star, if that. But no, I think people tend to, even the ones that continue playing, they tend to cut down a little bit. So you're saying about the rankings and about GCSEs. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
I guess around that age, maybe the kid has a bit more to say. Like, I guess at younger age, there's a lot of parent influence. I think when you start to get to that age and there's a lot more stuff going on, I think the problem I have with table tennis tournaments this season, it just takes so much time. Like, if I'm going to play a tournament, I'm going to be there all day. I think that's one problem with table tennis.
Well, you've
like
got
football,
the half-day option, haven't you?
Yeah, but even so, you're still going to get back at, like, they don't always last half days, I think. Something like, I don't know, a football match, you'll be back by like 10, 11. Whereas even a table tennis half day, and that's if you don't travel, you could be back by like 1, 2. So I think it is quite time consuming.
It's still a half day. But yeah, I can see your point about about parents, but at the same time, it's a sport. So how many parents force their kids, unless they're kind of unfit bracket, and they kind of push them to do something, and they put, table tennis is an easy sport, let's put them into table tennis. But I don't think many people come to table tennis coaching sessions because they're told they have to. I mean, it's supposed to be there because they enjoy it and they like it. I mean, can you tell us a bit more about your story in particular? Because, okay, you're still playing, but like I said, you're not playing as much as you were when you were younger. And, you know, I'm not sure how much you've improved maybe over the last couple of years as compared to what you did before. I'm not saying you haven't improved, but not maybe as rapidly as before since you stopped getting so much coaching and so on.
Yeah, well, I think I stopped pretty much midway through year 11. So obviously the exams. I think for coaching, where I was playing at the time, I had to sign up full time, commit to every week. And it was a bit, obviously I don't want to be playing table tennis the day before my exam, even though if it is a bit relaxing or whatever, you kind of really got to knuckle down then. So
okay, but there's no... Okay, so for my sessions, they pay a termly fee at the start of the term, but there's nobody going to say to you, you have to turn up to every single session, you know. And okay, if you miss a session, you don't get a refund, but you know, it's £7 or whatever it was. You know, the way I also offer the possibility, if you can't come to your regular session, or if you know, for example, near exam time you can't attend regularly, you could go twice a week, you know, for the first half of the term or something like that, or just not come for that individual term and then restart again in September. But obviously, I think once you stopped coming to coaching, that was it. You never came back again.
Yeah, I mean, I think I struggle with motivation, to be honest, because at that sort of time, I was around probably 50, 60 in England. I was playing quite strong county level, but the jump from kind of county to a good national player, it was quite hard to bridge the gap, because I know they used to do stuff like regional squads, which is kind of like the natural progression from counties, but I felt it was such a jump between national players to counties. I went and played county prem, and like local area I'll do quite well, but I got absolutely destroyed by pretty much everyone there. So I really saw a difference, and don't you think you competed at all? I thought you would have competed. I think I got 1 out of 10 or something. So I mean, lost a lot in 4.
But you weren't. That wasn't your last season as a junior, though, was it? That was your second or first season.
That was probably when I was in year 11, maybe the year after.
Yeah, but so you had 2 more years as a junior after that. So you were playing Premier, but you were actually under 16. You had 2 more years.
Like Will says, I think kind of life takes over. He was a top player. He was good. He was good as under 13 nationals. He then, through school, his exams, he dropped out. Coaching, a big commitment. it just spirals, and going from cadet to junior, it's not such a big step. Going from juniors into seniors, it's a big fish in a small pond to a small fish in a big pond, and you've got to want that from that step, which is why a lot of juniors drop out unless they've got that motivation, unless they've got a coach behind them who believes in them, unless they've got that motivation in themselves to think, well, actually, I want to be really good at table tennis. Always getting an education and a good job and being able to live.
I'm just going to say a bit about how I got into table tennis and how it went for me. So I just started quite late at 15, and from the word go, I was playing 3.5 hours a day, roughly 5 days a week. It wasn't training and there was no coaching. I would turn up an hour before school. We'd just have a open game session or just practice, whatever. And then we'd play like 15 minutes of break time, an hour at lunch, an hour after school. I did this every single day in school, regardless of, I mean, I was probably a bit, over the top. I did it all the way through school. And then I went to university and, played a lot of, I played twice, I think it was 4 hours a week at university. And the first year I didn't do as much because I was like settling in. I did in the second year, I then joined a local club and the league and everything, and then started to do some of the tournaments. But for me, I love table tennis, and just going to university or other life changes didn't stop that. And it's just kind of getting inside people's head as to if they enjoy something and then they don't enjoy, or I'm not so much talking about people who stop playing as much, because that's understandable. I'm talking more about the people who completely quit and don't play again.
But then people who stop playing and then come back, they're not as good as what they used to be. They go to tournaments, they get beat. They play league games, they get beat. It's a fee that you've got to pay. It's not a cheap sport. You've got to keep your equipment up. You've got to get new rubbers. And their performance drops down. And in the end, they think, is this really worth it? Or would I rather go out and see my pals on a weekend because I'm now becoming 18? And that is the difference. Life just takes over. And it's a lot, like Will said, it was committing to your coaching sessions. I know you said you're not going to say you turn up, but he's got to commit and he's got to pay for that full year or whatever. And come the time, you just think, well, you know what? Am I really enjoying it now? Because I'm getting beat. I'm not as good as what I used to be. And then you slip away.
Just go back to Will again. A couple of questions for Will. You're 18 now. What are your plans now? You're going to go to university. How much do you intend playing, when you're in university? Will it go completely? Will you play once a week? Join the university team? What are you going to do?
I'm going to hopefully join the university team. I mean, I'm going to Loughborough, hopefully, which aren't particularly known for their table tennis, but I know they've got a few players. And I think they run sessions at least 3 times a week.
Yeah.
So I'd probably go for that. And they've got...
Are you going to just do with what the university offers? Are you going to also join a local club, play a local league, or what do you think, tournament-wise?
Possibly... I mean, they do Bucks, so where all the unis play each other.
Oh, yes, so that's a regular Wednesday league match, basically, against other universities. So you probably do.
So I probably won't do local league if I'm doing that.
Right.
And it's not too decided about tournaments. I mean, if I'm back
where
home...
is Loughborough? Is that near Nottingham, or?
Yeah, it's quite close to Nottingham.
So I know Nottingham does quite a few tournaments. There's Dracos.
I mean, I'm not too sure around that area, but if I'm free on the weekend and there's a local tournament...
Have you got a driver's license?
Yeah, I do.
And are you going to have a car there or not?
No.
You're not? Okay.
You never know, Will. You might get the bug back. You might start enjoying it again.
Yeah, maybe.
That's all part of it. You've got to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, then it's pointless. Like go uni, get the bug, start playing again.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most enjoyable and 1 being the least, how much do you enjoy table tennis?
Give it a 7 or an 8.
Okay. And I know you do a lot of running. Where would you put running on that scale?
Oh, it's different. Probably pretty similar.
Right. Okay.
I mean, running's a lot
now,
more accessible.
The other one question I wanted to ask, yeah, running is more accessible. I can see that. If you could, I'm not suggesting that you should change anything, but if you could go back and change anything about your kind of table tennis, if you want, career up to now, would you change or would you just do the same?
I think maybe train a bit harder play a bit more when I was still an under 15 and see where it goes, because I think it's quite hard to catch up as a junior. Whereas if you start quite strong, go from there, more opportunities arise, more success, you want to play a bit more. So yeah, probably play a few more times a week when I was younger.
Yeah, I think it's easier when you're younger to fit the time in. You got less commitments.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, Gav, your comments on this?
Yeah, thought I wasn't going to get in there, Rory. So, in my opinion, it's similar, but couple of varying points. Anyway, I think there's a massive disconnect from junior life to senior life. You know, your life changes when you change from a 16-year-old table tennis player, 18-year-old table tennis player, whatever. Your life massively changes, which you've already alluded to, going to university, doing different things. You're no longer looking like Tuesday night rolls around. You're no longer sitting at home with nothing to do and you go to your local table tennis club and play. You now have the opportunity to go out with your mates, you know, go to a bar, go out to a nightclub, do whatever you want to do. So I think the biggest problem with the guys who turn from 16, 18, 19 that quit, they have no social outlet inside table tennis. You know, you're talking about they go to a club, they train. That's their only option within table tennis. They can't go to a club, play a few matches, maybe go out for a pint with the lads afterwards, you know, which is what the generic 16 to 18 to 20-year-old wants to do. You know, that's what life becomes in university and in and around that.
Okay, but the question is more centered around 15 or 16-year-olds. For example, in my club, I think year before, I had about 14 or 15 of that age. I've now got one junior left in the club and only one. I've got cadets, obviously, but one who's not a cadet. And okay, only one of those players is no. Well, I wasn't counting Will because he hasn't attended the coaching sessions. But only one of those players is no longer junior because he's old enough. The others are
but this
junior age.
My point goes to 15, 16-year-olds. If you think that a 15, 16-year-old is not starting to think about these things, then you're deluded. You know, they're starting to think about girls and drink and going out and rebelling and getting away from their parents and away from the things that they have to do. And that's something that table tennis becomes for a lot of young players. It's something that they're sent to do and they have to do, and it becomes a chore. And the other question I would ask, go on.
I was going to say, do you experience yourself 15, 16-year-olds quitting that you've coached?
Yeah, like, of course, absolutely. It's a pandemic in itself, you know. Like people are quitting all around us in all sports, and I think it's a bigger problem nowadays with, like, you know, social media and kids don't want to play sport as much. I think that's an overall worldwide problem. But in my opinion, like, why would a kid play at 16? Like, why did I play at 16? Because I was in the national team. Would I have played if I wasn't? No, I wouldn't have.
I was useless. I was completely useless at that age, and I was no good at all. I'm not saying I'm particularly good now, but I don't see. I had a different mindset. I mean, my goal was never to be international or whatever. I mean, the fact that I'm playing for the Irish veterans team, I would never have even thought that would be anywhere near possible. You know,
you enjoy to play, and you'll play at any given opportunity. Unfortunately, that's not the case for everybody. They enjoy other aspects of being involved in sports, like social and friends and those things. You know, that's such a huge part of it. And some people enjoy competition. When you like the lads touched on it already, you know, if you become 18 and you're not a national team or a guy that can go far in a tournament, is there really that many opportunities for you to play around your own level? We talked about it a few times today. I don't think there is, and I don't think that competitions and leagues are that enjoyable for that age group if you're not, like I was, you know, in a lucky position where I was winning or on a higher level. Okay,
Ellie, your say on this topic? Big topic.
Yeah, it's a good topic. Okay, so I'm going to bring it back to when I was at Harefield. Of course, like everyone, I lost players from the age of 15, 16. but I also managed to keep a lot of them. And I believe I managed to do that because it was very important for me to build a culture in the group that I had, that they all felt like a unit. And it was quite interesting because I remember before school, they would all come in to the playing hall and they would just sit there, chat together. And then if I would go to the shop sometimes, I would see them in the park together. I really managed to build this unit. And the way I did that wasn't just through table tennis. I used to take them we were lucky at Hereford, we had a football pitch, tennis courts and all these things. And I used to take them and go, right, let's play some football together. Let's go and run together. We did a lot of activities together. In fact, I used to even take them to like bowling and all sorts of these things. And that built unity, and that enabled them to say, you know what, I'm 15, I'm 16. I feel part of a family here. I don't want to go to do other things. And if I'm going to go out to a party, I'm going to go out with my group. And they did. They went out to parties with the group. And obviously that all disappeared once they left the school. That's different. You know, they all went in their own direction. But I'm going to give you another angle as well. When I was in France and every club was a full-time center, again, it was different because all these people were able to come in their own time. So if I used to see like a policeman, he'd come and train 10 in the morning. I would see some youngsters, they would come and train together maybe at 11 or 12 o'clock at night. They had access 24/7. So that enabled people to manage around their lifestyle. And that's something that we're missing big time as well in England, that we only have access to a very small window. And if it doesn't fit with our lifestyle or our changing lifestyle, then we're losing out. And that's where people like us lose out. So it comes down to a few things. One, it comes down to building a culture inside your club. And two, trying to develop a more professional structure that enables, that caters for lots of different people with their needs or whatever it may be.
Just to pick you up on a couple of points there. Like I said, I think I've mentioned before, I tend to have a break for 5 or 10 minutes in the middle of my 2-hour session, which a lot of people say isn't necessary. But actually, a lot of the kids enjoyed the break more because they were kind of socializing. And actually, they played football and stuff, which isn't really the kind of thing you should be doing at a break time. You're supposed to be relaxing, drinking some water, whatever. But that was the kind of social aspect of it, I think. And that's probably what kept a lot of them playing a bit longer than maybe when they'd lost interest in table tennis, they were still coming along for that kind of aspect. Now, you were talking about other activities. I mean, I've had plans of doing those kind of things. I mean, years ago when I was in Horsham Table Tennis Club, we went to Thorpe Park with some of the club members.
Yes.
And I have planned to do things like paintballing or other kind of trips together. We never actually managed to get a date together where enough people could do it. So it never actually happened. But I always wondered how effective that kind of thing would be. But you say it's worked for you.
Well, yeah, I mean, even when I was at Barnet Table Tennis Club, I would do all these activities. And like I said, I would put it out there. And if people didn't turn up, they didn't turn up. But what would happen, let's say if I had a small group that turned up, I'd make it as best as I could. And then those kids would go, oh, we had a brilliant time playing squash, whatever, I don't know. And then they all speak and then all of them go, well, next time I'm there. And that's kind of how it works. You've got to make it enticing. So ultimately, it's down to the coach to do their very best to find the things that encourage and help the players to continue growing and developing as a team. But I just want to touch on one point, Rory, is that I agree with you in the GCSE. I think that's a very poor excuse that I've heard for many years. And the truth of the matter is it's all about priority. And, for me, I didn't give a rat's ass about my GCSE. It was table tennis that all that was important to me. Okay, I went on to get a degree, a first-class degree and all that kind of stuff. But that was, later. For me, education, you could do it any time in your life. Okay, it's better to do it when you're 15 and 16, better, of course. And I wouldn't tell anyone not to do that. But what I would say is, you've got to understand what you love in life, and you've got to pursue that, and avoid following the sheep. You know, I've got many friends who are multimillionaires and they don't have any GCSE. So sometimes it's absolutely rubbish to waste what you think is important. Find what's important to you and follow that system. You know, table tennis was important to me. I've made a life out of it. Now, when I was younger, everyone would have told me, what are you doing wasting your time playing ping pong? You know, you're never going to make a living out of it. You're never going to be anything. And I didn't agree with them, and I did it.
Table tennis is an early specialization sport. So if you want to be good, you've got to do it when you're young. You can come back to education. I just listened to a podcast today about this guy who in his 40s decided to become a doctor, and he did it.
Yeah, of course.
He became
Absolutely.
a medical doctor, and you know, you can come back to education easier. I'm not saying wait till you're 40.
Well, you can do education while you're playing table tennis. No one says don't continue it, but education is a lifetime. Table tennis, unfortunately, is not. So if you actually have the opportunity to do something or to create something out of something that you love, then don't sacrifice.
No matter what, Ellie, just to kind of add to exactly what you're saying, you know, it's one of the worst, in my opinion, it's one of the worst lessons ever that a parent can teach a kid, is that when you have an important exam period coming up, okay, shut down everything else.
Oh,
let's focus all my eggs in one basket. You've got to focus on your exams, and it's hell for leather, massive pressure. This is it. You know, you're trying to teach your kid how to balance things in their life. You know, that is life, learning to balance and put your time in well, you know, being productive in certain hours and spending enough time on each area.
When I was in school, you know, and you're doing your homework and you're studying every night, you know, what I used to do is I'd go down for half an hour at a table in the garage, and I used to play either against the wall or against my robot, or if I could grab someone to play against, whatever, for half an hour. And then you go back and suddenly you got much more energy to do your homework or your study or whatever. And, you know, if you're stuck in the books for like 2-3 hours, I couldn't concentrate.
Yeah, well, it's actually scientifically proven that if you do a bit of physical exercise, you will study better. There's been studies on it. So they say you shouldn't stop if you play football, tennis. You shouldn't stop what you're doing. You should cut down a little bit, but you shouldn't stop, and that's scientifically proven.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of articles on that about that as well. Okay, it's been an extremely long show, about twice as it's supposed to be. So I have to thank all of you for your time, and hopefully you enjoyed it. I think we had a really, really good discussion, very important topics covered today. So we're going to leave it there.